Welcome to the DMF. I'm Justin Younts. This is part one. Welcome to the DMF. I have an Emmy-winning filmmaker who has written, produced, and directed over 46 films, including 18 HBO and multiple Hallmark favorites. He created a production company called Leif Films. His most recent project is Dancing Through the Shadow, based on a book of the same name that Agnes Bristow, his wife, wrote. He has also a few more Hallmark films coming in the future. Please welcome to the DMF, Leif Bristow. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Justin. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So my first question is, where did you grow up?
I was born in Toronto, and when I was 3, we moved to Alaska, and I lived there until I was 10, and then we moved to Denver, and then I moved to Dallas, then we moved to Chicago, then I moved back to Denver, where I finished high school and started university. And I moved to Edmonton for a while and went to university there for a particular program I wanted to take. Then I went to Europe and sang for a year and a half, then did a concert tour, and then came back and ended up in California for 6 years, going to theater school. And then after that, I ended up moving back to Toronto to build a film and television career.
Wow, so you've been like all over the place.
You know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, the great thing about that and having traveled is, and that's what I love about even the movies that, my wife and I produce and kind of within the genres that we work in. The more I've traveled around the world, the more you realize how similar we are, no matter where we are in the world. You never go to a country like when we were filming in Malta or South Africa. You never go to a country where people don't want to laugh. They want to sing. They enjoy going to the movie and having a good cry. They like going out for dinner and socializing and laughing in the street or having a great laugh out in an outdoor restaurant. And they feel the same pains. Nobody wants to, parents want to do things to make sure that their children's lives are potentially better than theirs were. How can they help enrich their kids' lives? Nobody ever wants to see their kid die in a war. They don't want to, you don't want to see them die anyway. But we're just so much more similar, and the more we're able to talk to each other and interact that way, the more we learn how similar we are versus how different we think we might be based on the countries we live in.
Yeah. And I think that builds empathy. And I think that that's one of the keys that we really need to get to throughout the world. And I think it is a lack of travel. It's a lack of world knowledge where we see these other countries, especially in America, as just, oh, they're different from us. And it's like, no, they're the same. They're living, breathing people.
Mhm.
They're not aliens. They're not, like we try to think of them like creatures or something. It's like, no, they do the same thing as you. And the more we can get to that idea of like we're the same, the more we can, come together
Yeah.
as
Oh,
we go
absolutely.
on.
Yeah. The more you're able to have that dialogue and actually reach out to people and see people in their own environment, and to some degree, I think that also starts at home. You know,
Yeah.
like like um, I live in Toronto now, and in 2001, I think it was, Toronto became identified as the most multicultural city in the world, surpassing London, England.
Wow.
So you can stand on a street corner in Toronto and hear many languages.
Yeah.
So like when our kids were growing up, we would do things like maybe once a month, we would identify a different area. So 1 week we might say, okay, let's go to Little Italy. We take the kids to Little Italy and go into stores and buy foods and experience stuff and buy ingredients and come home and make a dinner. Or we would go to Chinatown and spend the time, and meet people and talk to people. And you can do that in Little Portugal or Greek town or just
Yeah.
so many areas. Um, and for those of us living in North America, we have, whether it's depending on where you live, we've got large communities of people whose heritages are just different, and taking the time to get to know each other and ask questions. It's like a lot of people, you think about and I think about it in terms of even, for Dancing Through the Shadow, there's 55 million people in North America of Asian ancestry.
I know.
And what do most of us know about our neighbors who might be of Asian ancestry other than going to Chinatown or seeing a Jackie Chan movie. I mean, how much time do we actually take to ask them about their experience and
Yeah.
what their life is like, and get to know them as a community, or whether the Mexican and community, or some of the other communities, and just understanding each other at a more human level. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of people don't realize, much of the original Chinese community in the United States came to build the railroad,
I know.
and they were treated horrifically.
Yep. Absolutely. And it's
So
and it's sad because it's just like I feel like I feel like we continue to do this cycle thing instead of realizing that we have history. We almost have a cheat sheet of how this is going to go.
yeah,
Let's use that and do that. But the
as a way
problem
to build a
is,
positive future. Yeah,
yeah, but the problem is human emotion
yeah,
is the one thing that doesn't really change. People are still greedy. People are still jealous.
right,
We still love it. There's good things too, to it, but it's
yeah,
like that we don't seem to ever get past that. That's why we can look at, something happening in history and go, well, we can relate because, it's the same thing.
yeah, yeah. And those are global things, and that's why like the films that you talked about, some of what we've done. I mean, my wife and I produce a lot of Hallmark movies. We've been very,
Yeah.
very blessed. Um, I was fortunate to be part of a company where, yeah, we produced um, 18 films for HBO that won a lot of Emmys and over 200 awards around the world. I had great partners in doing that. Again, it was all my focus has always been things that a co-viewing family audience can watch together. Every once in a
Mhm.
while, I do something that's suspenseful. I mean,
Yeah.
Dancing Through the Shadow is a little bit more mature, but it is not.
Yeah.
I would say anybody over the age of 12 could
Yeah.
easily watch that movie
Yeah.
and have an understanding. Um, but yeah, what we've done in our world of telling stories, we do a lot in what you might call exotic locations.
Yeah.
Some people say we created the concept of exotic locations for Hallmark, in that we've done films in Ireland, Belgium, Malta, South Africa, Germany, Austria, France, um, and part of that is that in building things and figuring out how to entertain the audience, the most powerful romance movies in history really were all initiated with Audrey Hepburn, Gina Lola Brigida, Sophia Loren, at a time when air travel was becoming affordable. I'm not saying it was cheap, but it was
Yeah.
becoming affordable for a first time for international travel. The film tourism generated from those movies was enormous. Much the way things like Lord of the Rings, people going to New Zealand to see sets from Lord of the Rings, or
Yeah.
lots of other places in the world. I can remember growing up and had to go see, when we lived in Texas. You had to go to see where they shot Dallas.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So film tourism is massive, and for 90% of North America's audience will never leave continental North America in their lifetime.
Or have a passport.
A lot of people don't have a passport. So, many people will never leave the state they were born in. So their opportunity to see cultures in a different way and explore it is having these movies where the
Yeah.
location becomes a central character in the movie. So that's a lot of what we've done. And I think, in doing that, it doesn't matter. That's on the romance side, but even exploring and seeing how cultures live in environments that we're not used to. Even this is why, like when you talk about empathy, a movie like A Slumdog Millionaire can become a hit globally
Yeah.
because of that empathy that we can immediately establish for a character, that we're watching this person trying to rise above the adversity, the levels of poverty, and different other things that life has handed them, but positively finding a way to move beyond that. And we gain the empathy, but in doing that, we also got a sense to explore a culture in a way that we hadn't before. And because of that empathy, we can we can watch it and go, oh wow, I learned something, which is what I hope people do when, either in reading Aggie's book or watching the movie. Um,
Mhm.
it's not
Were
a
you,
Jackie Chan sitcom.
were you always interested in film, in the arts?
I was a child performer.
Oh,
Um, I was always performing, mostly as a singer.
okay.
And then I did musicals when I was in high school, like a lot of people. But then I went to opera school and then went to Europe and sang and did other things. And eventually, when I had to make a real hard decision about uh, going to La Scala in Milan, or at that time, I really decided I wanted to entertain the mass more
Mm,
so few.
yeah.
So I decided to come back and get my degree in theater, and I looked at theater schools all over the world. Ended up going to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I went to the campus in Pasadena versus New York,
Mhm.
and it was a great gift in terms of learning the craft. And so I worked as a performer for a lot of years after that. And then at a certain point, I wanted to understand how to use um, capital markets to help me with what I wanted to accomplish in entertainment. Because everybody I knew in entertainment that was trying to produce a movie or direct
Yeah.
or act or is always running around just trying to find somebody to finance it. So I took a few years off, and my everybody in my family is in investment banking,
Yeah,
and
that's what I was going to mention that because you come from, a financial family. How did that help you as a filmmaker? Because that seems to be the thing that a lot of people don't understand.
it's amazing how few filmmakers actually understand the capital required to fulfill their dreams.
Yeah.
And so often I believe in no matter what we do, the as I've always said, money has been around since the beginning of time,
Yeah.
and money only has value if you can put it to work.
Exactly.
Investors, there's always been investors since the beginning of time. They're just looking for something good to invest in.
Yeah.
So when you're asking somebody for their money, you have to understand what their needs are. Like, if you're going to somebody who only ever invests in pharmaceuticals, it's not going to do you a lot of good to ask them if they want to finance a chicken farm. It's just like, okay, when you're trying to get a mortgage on your home, you don't go in and talk to the banker about cars and other stuff. You go in to get the money you need for what the purpose is. And most people in our industry don't, they're just, they just want somebody to embrace and become that benefactor as
Yeah.
opposed to understanding the needs of the person providing the money. So what I did is I took the time off, and fortunate because of growing up in an investment banking family and just a financial family. I had just an innate understanding of finance to begin with, and
Yeah.
I've done it. Been involved a lot in doing projects um, since I was in my early teens, um, and so I took time off to understand how to finance stuff. So I financed everything from hovercrafts to pharmaceuticals,
Oh, wow.
financed oil and gas companies, mines, you name it. And then I had the opportunity to join Divine Entertainment with two partners, Richard and David, at a time when they had just won an Emmy for Beethoven Lives Upstairs, but finance wasn't their forte. They knew how to make a movie, but the finance wasn't the forte. So I then um, kind of divested a lot of my other holdings, and we took that company public and built a sizable entertainment company out of it at the time, and did those movies. And then so I've always used that approach because I thought I understand the actor's journey. So whether I'm directing or simply executive producing, I understand that journey. I understand the quality of what I want to see on screen.
Yeah.
And my global travels and meeting people everywhere is what really helped me discover that. I had a great mentor early on in Sammy Davis Jr.,
Oh,
um,
wow.
who helped me a lot when I was singing and when I was performing.
That's
Um,
Sammy Davis Jr.
yeah,
Wow.
that's Sammy Davis Jr. Um, he he and Jerry Lewis helped me a lot in the early days.
Ah,
And so, and they gave me invaluable advice about my career and what I was performing. And I've used that same advice in making movies, but I knew that I knew what I wanted to do. So I thought instead of going back to film school and learning about camera lenses and angles and stuff, I know how to direct
yeah,
actors.
yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll collaborate with great cinematographers. And then instead, I'll go learn how to finance the product. So instead of
Okay.
having to run around asking everybody for money, I'll learn how to finance it. Then I can be the financial source. And then when I go make a movie, I can collaborate with a great cinematographer because they're trying to be the best that they can at their craft and know the lenses better than me. And over the years, I've learned the lenses, I've learned the pieces, but I've done it through collaboration. And still, that collaboration goes on every movie, no matter what, because what you thought might be the right lens or the right angle or the right approach,
Yeah.
a good cinematographer will say, no, based on the emotion of what we're trying to convey in this scene, if we do it this way and if I adjust the lighting this way, it will amplify the scene much better. And that's why you collaborate
Now,
when you make movies.
going back a little bit, when you're learning financing and how to do that, how did you go about that? Did you read books? Did you study? How did you go about it?
You know, um, I think growing up the way I did, I was just
It's just innate.
it was just innate for me. I mean, I remember I still have the
Wow.
$2 bill actually in a drawer right behind you.
Yeah.
Um, when I was 8 years old, I wanted a bike for Christmas when we lived in Alaska. Cost
Yeah.
$26 for a red Schwinn two wheeler,
Wow.
and my dad gave me a $2 bill, and he said, "Go figure out how to earn the rest of the money."
Oh wow, entrepreneur.
So I cut down Christmas trees for people. I sold Christmas cards to businesses in downtown Alaska.
Wow.
Um, or on the back of comic books, you'd see they had Christmas cards, and you could get a box of Christmas cards, and then you could sell them and take orders, and you did it early.
Yeah.
So I found all the comic books that had all the different companies that had Christmas cards, and I ordered the sample Christmas cards from all of them, and convinced my parents to let me go downtown and try to sell them to businesses. And I'd already walked around the neighborhood and sold them to people who was going to turn down an 8 year old that was trying to sell them, get
Yeah.
them to buy their Christmas cards. So, um, so I did that, and then uh, made a lot more than enough money to buy a bike.
Yeah.
And then growing up, then when we moved, I always had a paper route, or I was doing cutting yards when I lived in Texas, and so I was always doing stuff like that. And then my parents had real estate projects, and I would quite often do the study for the real estate project and figure out how
Wow.
what capital was needed to make it work. So by the time I was 20, I had financed a lot of stuff already. And
Yeah.
so when I wanted to go the next step, I worked with people that were really smart, lawyers and partners that were really savvy in that world, and we built it together. So I knew how to explain the product, I knew how to raise it, um, and then so it was just part of it. I always had good advisors.
Yeah.
I,
That's
you
what
know,
I'm
I,
saying. It's
I
that.
can say I was self-taught, but I didn't do it by going to school and getting an MBA. I knew
Yeah.
how to do it instinctively. But when you have great advisors as part of your team and people that you can bounce ideas off of to make sure you're not doing something incorrectly, or, I had great lawyers and financial people that could help me finesse finance plans and everything else. So, I'm fortunate in that regard.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of been, in a sense, a little bit of that, and understanding how to do treaty co-productions around the world,
Yeah.
which I've done a lot of, and understanding how to bring those resources to the table to help um, make projects go smoother. That's
Yeah.
that's really been my world.
Now, just going back a little bit, you talked about, being a young performer and everything. Can you just give us a little bit of like what was it about performing that you really loved? Like what was it that jumped at
Oh, probably just because I was just a natural born ham.
you?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I was that kid. I loved to sing, and so I was always singing, and so I sang publicly, and I was just always a singer, and
Yeah.
um, so um, and then the opportunities came to do other things, and so I always just did them. I mean, I played hockey, I did everything. I played
Yeah.
baseball, I played hockey, I wrestled in high school. I was, I was always in the hockey team. All the way through, and I just love being active. But there's there's a certain thrill when you're standing on the stage and just that feeling that's just so incredible. It's hard to replace.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's always been there. And then, I mean, I stopped performing full time years ago, in part because especially when our youngest was born, I, I, I'd been offered the opportunity to go back to Broadway and do a lead in a Broadway play. And I had to really give it thought because I thought, okay, well, the real truth is my career about me, in which
Yeah.
case my wife and children become stage widows because I'm always in the theater and
Yeah.
our hours are completely contrary to each other's, or is there a way I can have the career in the field that I love and then have and really have it be more about my family? So I decided to stop performing full time and go back to just directing and executive producing. So if I feel like being in a movie, I just put myself in the movie. So it doesn't really matter.
I've seen you. We're gonna talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not like I have to. So
with
it's just
like, so you talk about, like, you mentioned MBAs and people like that when they come in. And I feel like you touched on something that's very important, that the fact that they don't really get the practical knowledge. They're in the classroom setting, but they're not pushed out there to kind of fail in a way. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just to kind of get that idea of, like, this is how it really works.
hey, I think there's so many great benefits. Like if I had tons and tons of time and I was back in my 20s, I might say, you know what, I'm going to go get my MBA too,
Yeah.
because one of the things that I like quite often is the discipline and the thinking process. So when I'm working with somebody, that person with that knowledge can get to the end result in a much more sophisticated, smart way than I can.
Yeah.
I may end up at the same place, but the journey isn't necessarily as well thought out because I come from a different skill set. Like I can read the balance sheet, I can do those things, I can put together the budget really fast. But somebody who has a different skill will go, yes, but if we do it this way, you can accomplish this.
Exactly.
And that's why um, all those disciplines, I commend anybody for going and gaining the discipline that they get. Most people in the film industry and in many walks of life, unless you go out to become a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, or a veterinarian, or something like that, most people never end up as their career in the
Yeah.
line of work that they got their education in. The education is a brilliant tool to make you think, to make you understand, and to give you the tools to move on in life. So those skills are incredibly important no matter what discipline you use them in.
Yeah.
Um, some people don't want to go on and be the risk taker that an entrepreneur has to be to get to a certain level of success. Um, but but all of that is very valuable. Like I think, like for most directors, because obviously we do a lot of movies and I only direct some, I hire a lot of directors. I will almost invariably gravitate to the director that either was a performer first
Mhm.
or took theater as part of their directing program.
Yeah.
Because the director that simply learns how to use a camera lens and can say, do this, do this, do this, isn't understanding how necessarily to be that person that reaches into the actor's soul
Yeah.
and pulls more out.
The human being, because
Yeah.
you're dealing with human beings. Yeah.
I tend to gravitate to directors that have had some practical experience as an actor,
Mhm.
um, or have studied it as part of learning to be a director, versus the people that haven't. You
Yeah.
know, so
Going back to, because you mentioned Sammy Davis Jr., you mentioned Jerry Lewis. Can you talk a little bit about some of the advice that they did give you,
well, yeah, I
or
remember.
no?
Yeah, no, that was great. I mean, Sammy Davis Jr., because of the school I was at, he was very close friends to the people at the school, and I was setting up doing a concert, And he always said, the first 2 minutes of that concert, if you haven't drawn the audience into the palm of your hands in the first 2 minutes, you won't have them at the end of this, at the end of the first act, and then you won't have them for the second act. So always start with a song that everybody knows
Mm,
and that's up tempo, so you can draw them in,
yeah.
or make sure you've got an up tempo one that feels like something they know before you do something they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? A film is no different. If you don't give the audience in the first 2 minutes something that draws them in and makes them feel like this is something familiar or something they want to watch, you've lost them.
Yeah. It's true.
So there's
It's true.
you know it's there's so many it was just great advice at the time with what I was doing, and a couple of opportunities that were in front of me. So but I've always carried kind of like the wisdom, and kind of watched how they did things when in ways that they were trying to assist me personally, um, in my career. um, so just
Yeah.
you come across great words of wisdom from lots of people in lots of sectors from time to time. And some of the best advice I've ever had have been from some friends I had from Atlanta that weren't even in the film industry. And
Yeah.
sometimes they come up with something, you go, yeah, you know what? That's brilliant. And it really applies.
I think that's great life advice. Always be open to things. Don't sit there and think that just because they're not in your business, they can't give you advice because it just you don't know where it's going to come from. You don't know where the spark is going to come from. It
Exactly.
could come from, unfortunately, Chat GPT, could spark something in you. You don't
Well,
want
you
to
know what?
rely only on it, but it's a tool.
Well, yeah,
And
you know what, you were asking about change earlier. I mean, that's the great thing that we have to recognize. And I've been having this discussion with a couple of departments on a project we're working on right now. You have to think, in many ways, AI is the much more sophisticated form of visual effects than what visual effects started out.
yeah,
Umpteen years ago, there was no such thing as a visual effects department,
yeah,
and as technology changed and demands became greater and the computer became more sophisticated, all of a sudden we had this tool for visual effects and could do things we couldn't do before. Well, it displaced a whole whack of people in our industry.
yeah,
A bunch of people lost their jobs because now there was a technological way of doing things that people had done as a craft forever.
yeah.
But
Puppetry
it,
and
but it
stop motion.
opened new opportunities.
Yeah,
And we're in that world again where AI is a tool. It has to be managed in the right way, but it can be a sophisticated tool to give advice, but only if you have the knowledge to know how to instruct it and give it
exactly, exactly.
the right demands of what you need.
Like you
It's
don't want
not
to
going to
just put in
replace human
there.
emotion. Yeah, it's not
You
going to
don't want to
replace
just
human
put
emotion.
in, how to act. It's going to
Right.
give you a list of stuff. It's like, and you don't want to. My fear is people are going to look at it and go, "Write me a screenplay." It's like, no, now you're taking out the human element. If you wanted to
Oh,
proofread it and maybe find something that's good, but if
yeah.
you're just going
Yeah.
to let it to do the work for you, then it's like,
Well, then it really isn't.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to take a scene that somebody's written and put it and go, okay, I'm having a problem with this scene and it's supposed
yeah,
to be doing this. Why am I missing something? And then have ChatGPT, or have AI go, oh, here's the flaw.
yeah,
Or having read these three scenes together, this is a complete repetition, and here's why.
yeah,
Oh,
stuff
I
like
hadn't
that. Yeah,
thought of that. And you could be right or wrong, but it's a tool to help you think through things, not the tool to be the end result. Except if somebody says, look, I'm making an AI movie, the same as
yeah,
people were making video games.
yeah,
Most of the characters in those video games are all made up by the video game. So if
yeah,
you say, okay, now I'm making a video game, just like it was a cartoon, and everything in it is AI, and you tell the world it's AI, then people might embrace that movie for what it is and just
exactly.
watch it for what it is, not because it's trying to replicate or take away a living actor's job. It's just a different form.
It's the transparency. We need
Yeah.
to tell people like what this is. And you're seeing people are just putting that out there and they're not telling people that it's AI. And then you look at it and you go, well, that's AI. That's not real.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if
It's
somebody
like,
says, yeah, if somebody says, look, I'm going to create a new Pixar movie, but I'm going to use AI instead of 3,000 technicians doing all this hand painting, and you
yeah,
can do it. And somebody goes, holy Hannah, I loved it. Well, then if the audience loves it, just tell them what it is and
exactly.
let it be successful for what it is, trying, not for what it's trying to replace.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.